Hey, what's up, guys? It's Rico here, CEO of SourceFind Asia, host of Made in China podcast, and the host of the SourceFind Asia YouTube channel, of course, back with another one. Today's video, I'm going to be talking about sourcing best practices when you're trying to source a coronavirus mask. So there's the two types of masks, the 3-ply, the typical mask that everybody just wears around, and then there's the KN95, which is also a very common mask, but can also be medical grade and used in hospitals by medical practitioners.
Man, I swear I already told you, man.
I must have told you once, in fact I told you twice. I'll bring the heat into the beat but keep it cold as ice. It's been a little while, profile all this time. Definition on the mission, it'll blow your mind. A little over time, now gym so refined. One hit and we gon' kill it like it's GoldenEye. So if you open up your eyes, it'll blow your mind. Consider this the call to arms to make the soldiers rise. Go ahead and roll the dice, follow your own advice. But no, you couldn't hold a candle, let alone my mic. I know that this is the original, the prototype. The often imitated, you make me roll my eyes. You really wanna do it, you get pulverized. Left flex biceps, a Hulk Hogan size.
I'm gonna start off by what prompted me to make this video. So today's Sunday, March 22nd. Like in the last 4 days or so, we've been getting a lot of inquiries about masks to Europe, now masks to the USA. I'm expecting that there's just gonna be more people sourcing these masks because basically the demand is there, and a lot of the factories have taken portions of their production line. Factories that weren't even making masks before have bought machinery and are making masks in China. Whenever there's a situation like this, even this happened with the fidget spinners trend or fad 3 years ago, it creates room for mistakes. It creates rooms where people make quick decisions because they need something immediately and they're not going to follow all the steps. So there's a lot of factories that might be promising that their masks are medical grade, or they might be promising that they have the right certifications, but they actually don't. There's just going to be a lot of room for scams, a lot of room for huge mistakes that are made just because of the rush of buying the masks. A lot of people are going to take advantage of the situation. So I just wanted to kind of make a video talking about the best practices. Let's just start off with the different types of masks, right? So obviously I'm not a medical professional, so I'm not going to break down all the different possibilities, but the two most common masks, which I mentioned at the top of the video, is the 3-ply mask, usually for personal use. That's the most common mask that you see most people walking around with. In Asia, those masks were like pretty much used already for years just because of the air quality stuff. And then the other one is the KN95 mask. So that is the one that is more medical grade. That's the one that you're gonna see medical practitioners using. That's the one that has, extra layers of protection and stuff like that. There's two parts. There's the medical grade version, and then there's one that's made, it's the same, but it hasn't gone through the proper testing to be considered a medical grade mask. What's happened in China right now is that the factories that had the machinery and the certifications to make the medical grade version of those masks have been taken over. They're now state controlled. They've been taken over by the Chinese government. And the Chinese government is not selling those masks directly to private businesses. I mean, they might be, but that's not the main function right now. They're either donating the masks to countries that need them, or they are working directly with health organizations or governments of other countries to buy masks. Just because, of course, they went through this already, so they kind of had to do it for the local population in China, but now they're doing it for the global population as a whole. What happened was it created a vacuum where the private businesses needed these masks, and then the factories that already had the capabilities but didn't have the certificates just ramped up their productions. Factories that maybe were making other types of textiles, or even just factories that felt like they could, went and bought the appropriate machinery to be able to make these masks. So what that does is that creates a opportunity for some of the trading companies to kind of lie about the quality of the masks. So they're able to make cheap quality masks and then say that, hey, this is going to be what you need. This is surgical grade or whatever. You have to be very, very careful about that. The best thing that you can do is you can look for the certificates. So before I talk about that, let's just talk about the climate with the actual factory. So the factories that have jumped into this now, it's pretty crazy. It reminds me a lot of the fidget spinner situation, where you have all these factories that have just created production lines dedicated towards masks, and then you have trading companies, so local trading companies that are then aggregating all these different factories. One supplier, which I think is basically a Chinese trading company that has aggregated a lot of factories in and around Foshan, he contacted me 2 days ago and told me that their production level or production capacity is around 1 million masks a day. So 500,000 masks per shift, and a shift is 8 hours, so they can do double shifts with 2 different groups of workers. So basically 1 million masks a day. Like, that is crazy. So they have 8 separate factories dedicated to making masks. The issue that presents is like the inconsistency of quality. And because of the climate right now in China, it's very difficult for, like, I can't just send my staff to these factories. Like when we did the fidget spinners 3 years ago, I literally sent 3 of my employees to sit in the factories and inspect things as they were being made and count the items as they were being made so that we could ship them immediately, right? Whereas like right now, because of the nature of the coronavirus, we're limited in how much time or where we can go. It's not really safe to just like send my employees to factories that we are not familiar with and have them be in confined spaces with a lot of workers. So that's the tricky part, is obviously we have to lean then on QC companies, but even then with masks, the difficult part about doing quality control inspections on masks is once you open the mask, it's kind of unusable. You can't really test the masks for their functionality unless you're able to send them to like a lab. That is really one of the difficult things about this. The best thing you can do is the factory can provide samples, and then you can have it, if you do have the time, have it tested, or at least if you have somebody who's a professional and would know the difference in quality, maybe you have samples of other masks, you can compare them. So that's the best thing that you can probably do right now. And then of course, asking the factories for what certificates they have. In order for a factory to be qualified to make the masks at a medical grade, they have to have like a dust-free clean room. Like there's a lot of different aspects. So most of these factories might not have that, or they have it now, but they just haven't gone through the certification process. But they definitely have to be at least FDA certified and CE certified, especially if you're shipping to Europe. Then it's CE. It might not need FDA certification, but you know, it's always safer if they have both. That's always a good sign. And these days, just because the Chinese government itself is very, very strict about what they're allowing to ship out, especially when it comes to masks, like specifically masks. It's almost impossible to ship out these masks without having the right certifications. If you buy those masks from a non-certified factory and then you try to get it out of China, it's probably going to get blocked. If you ship them to the US or Europe, it probably won't be allowed into the country. And then you're also liable if you ship these masks and it turns out that they don't have the right certification. You're going to be liable for that. So you really have to make sure that that is something that you're focusing on and communicating that with the factories. Another thing that you can do is have the factories provide photos of their actual warehouse and space and video. Have them take pictures of the masks. And actually one thing that a recent inquiry asked us to do is when we go inspect the product, they asked us to literally write a piece of paper with their company name on it while standing in the factory with the mass production behind us or in front of us, however we set it up. So it's such a rush situation, and the numbers that we're talking about are so large that we're limited in the way that you can verify things. So if you want to do something like that, ask your agent or ask somebody at the factory to go stand in the factory and write something specific on a piece of paper and take a picture so that you have at least evidence that this is real. That is one option. There are definitely still QC companies that will go to the factories. The only problem is that some of these factories don't even want QC companies to go there. They don't want people to come there. So that's always going to be risky. You gotta weigh up those options. It's also a red flag if you're asking a factory to allow you to send somebody there to do a QC, even if you don't actually end up doing it because of how rushed the situation is. Like if they don't want to do that, I would be questioning why. So what we're doing is we're trying to do factory direct, and I think that would be my advice to anybody that's watching this is try to go factory direct. There's nothing wrong again with working with a trading company, but the risks involved are that the quality could be inconsistent. So if you're working with a factory direct, chances are that the production capacities are going to be lower and it might take a little bit longer to produce the masks. But at the same time, you have more control over quality. There's going to be more consistency there. Most likely what's going to happen is if you're dealing with larger quantities, I would say anywhere in the hundreds of thousands of mass range, so like let's say 100K, let's say 150K plus, you're probably going to need to coordinate with multiple factories in order to kind of get the amount of mass that you need in a short space of time. So really just keep that in mind. Try to go factory direct. It's the same as always, like with most products, you want to try to go factory direct. But I completely understand why you might end up working with a trading company that can help you coordinate multiple suppliers. You just have to be careful about quality and consistency there. The last thing I wanted to talk about is because of the restrictions that the government has in place, it's going to be extremely difficult to get large quantities of masks out of China via air quickly. Typically right now what's happening is that if you have an import-export license, like if you're an international trading company in China and you have an import-export license, then you can kind of go through the import-export process yourself, and then that allows you to basically book a cargo plane. So you can get your stuff, and that way you can ship out 200,000 masks on a plane, in one day. If you don't have an import-export license, which is most companies, including mine, we're a registered trading company, registered sourcing company in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong we have an import-export license, but the rules are less strict in Hong Kong when it comes to that. And then in mainland China, we don't have an import-export license just because it's never really a necessity. Typically, we will work with the factory that we're working with. We'll use their import-export license to get the product shipped out. In this situation, a lot of these factories are worried that they're gonna get in trouble with the Chinese government for producing the products because of the restrictions. A lot of them are just like all hands on deck, super busy, just focused on manufacturing. They don't want to deal with the shipping process. So a lot of them are just like, no, we're not going to help you with the shipping process. We'll make the product, but you need to figure it out. You need to figure out how you're going to get the product to your clients. So in tandem with our freight forwarders, freight forwarders have basically suggested that we stagger shipments. So instead of trying to ship out 50,000 masks at the same time, we could do that by sea, no problem. But of course, it's a time-sensitive situation. We will ship out, 10,000 a day for 5 days. So that's basically what's happening right now. Is we're gonna have to stagger shipments. So there's some other options that I'm looking into, seeing if we can maybe ship them outside to Hong Kong, for example, and then put them into a consolidated shipment, see if we can work with multiple express shipping companies so we can kind of ship, even if we're breaking the shipments into smaller shipments, maybe shipping them all out at the same time. So I'll keep you guys updated when it comes to that, but I just wanted to point that out to people. Unless the factory that you're working with is willing to help you go through that import-export process, you're probably gonna have to ship things via express shipment. The only reason why you have to break down the shipments into an express shipment is because there are limitations on DHL, like how much product you can put on a DHL express shipment. Right? Like you can't take over the whole DHL plane. So yeah, you'd have to break your shipments into smaller ones. When you start to get into some of the numbers that we're hearing about, hundreds of thousands of masks, millions of masks potentially, when you start to get into those numbers, then it becomes different, right? Because now you go to a factory and you say, hey, I'm trying to order 10 million masks or 5 million masks or a million masks or whatever. They're most likely gonna be like, oh, okay, we'll definitely help you with the export process. It's a very, very unique time that we're in. Like this kind of reminds me of the fidget spinner situation, but just times 100. Like the sense, because it's a medical issue and it's literally in the entire world, whereas the fidget spinners were a toy. And I wouldn't say every single country in the world was crazy about fidget spinners. It was a good chunk of the population, but it was a toy, right? Like adults weren't really buying it as much. Yeah, whereas with masks, it's literally everybody. Government agencies and health organizations and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm gonna keep you guys updated. I'm still in Manila, still on the lockdown. This is like day 7 of the lockdown. I'm just trying to keep productive and record videos and create more content, and talking to my team in China daily, talking to my business partner and everybody around the world. So there's definitely a lot of developments happening in China and around the world, so I'll definitely continue to create these videos. If you like this kind of content, like, comment, share, subscribe. Stay safe out there, and I will see you guys next week. I might release another video before the end of this week, but we'll see. Cheers.